Marvin Gaye's final months were filled with paranoia that someone was coming after him, but by many accounts, the person he should have been scared of the most was himself. In 1983, Marvin Gaye was poised for an historic comeback. His 16th album, Midnight Love, had just come out at the end of the previous year, and it seemed to be ushering in an entirely new stage of his career. On February 13th, he sang the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Game, which the league itself called a seminal moment in sports history. That performance was also the first video aired on VH1 when it launched on January 1, 1985. A few months after the All-Star Game, Gaye performed on Soul Train for the last time. Then on May 16th, he appeared on the TV special Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, and Forever, and proved to be just as spellbinding as ever. Gaye was now 2 years removed from a brutal divorce, and it appeared as though the worst was behind him. But behind the scenes, he was struggling. He was far from a perfect man, as he'd endured drug addiction and a string of broken relationships. Plus, his mental health had been deteriorating for quite some time. While Gaye was still killing it on the stage in 1983, he was growing increasingly paranoid off it. He hired bodyguards with loaded guns, began wearing bulletproof vests, and sent his father a gun that would eventually be used to kill him. According to his ex-wife Janice Hunter, Gaye also suffered from stage fright and crippling self-doubt, and his younger sister Zeola Gaye has revealed that he believed that someone wanted to kill him. But in truth, it seems that the only person who was trying to kill Marvin Gaye was none other than Marvin Gaye himself. Gaye was reportedly targeted by several death threats, but this wasn't exactly unusual for a star as big as he was. Nevertheless, he took them seriously and told people that he was being stalked. He even called a press conference to announce that he'd hired a lawyer because he believed that he'd been poisoned. On top of all that, he instructed limo drivers to drive in circles to throw off an unseen pursuer. He also avoided stepping out of elevators on specific floors and became terrified to go anywhere but his hotel. Eventually, he would have nowhere to go but home.
He'd get on the elevator and punch every floor, so he wouldn't know what floor he got off on. Oh, wow. And he thought someone was trying to kill him.
Gaye's paranoia makes a certain amount of sense when you realize that his childhood was filled with abuse, and his prolific drug consumption certainly didn't help either. He reportedly started using cocaine in the early 1960s and then eventually became dependent on it, while also occasionally dabbling with PCP. Ironically enough, he spent much of his time alternating between the unlikely pairing of reading scripture and ingesting cocaine. Maybe if drug addiction were Gaye's only demon, he might have survived, but he was clearly struggling with a lot more darkness than that.
I've been happy and somewhat, most of the time, pretty depressed.
In 1983, Marvin Gaye remarked that a new tour would likely kill him, but his financial situation eventually backed him into a corner. So that April, he kicked off the Sexual Healing Tour, which would last until August 14th. He was creative and controversial as ever, but while the tour itself seemed to be going well, he was falling apart behind the scenes both mentally and physically. Gaye's paranoia led to him hiring bodyguards and having his sister bring water to him while he was on stage to avoid poisoning. He was depressed, scared, exhausted, and continually convinced that the next stop would be his last. As the tour continued, his health took a turn for the worse, and he was hospitalized for exhaustion in Florida. His predictions seemed to be coming true, as it appeared that the tour was indeed killing him.
How was your stay in the hospital?
It was terrific. Look.
After the end of the Sexual Healing Tour, Gaye moved back in with his parents, Alberta and Marvin Gaye Sr. They spelled their last name G-A-Y, while their son added the E at the end to distance himself from his father and to escape rumors about his sexuality. The reunion was tumultuous, to put it mildly. Marvin Jr. endured a brutal childhood filled with whippings under a strictly religious Pentecostal household. In the book Divided Soul, The Life of Marvin Gaye, the singer recalled, "Living with father was something like living with a king, a very peculiar, changeable, cruel, and all-powerful king." Marvin Sr. was reportedly an alcoholic and a closeted cross-dresser. He could be kind when he wasn't drinking, but very much not kind when he was. Nevertheless, his daughter Zeola has defended him, once saying, "For all these years, so many people have been angry with my father, but my father was not a monster." While living in his family's home, Marvin Jr. continued to do drugs while also spending much of his time obsessively staring at a gun, which he would eventually throw through his bedroom window without opening the glass. During the last year of his life, Gaye's girlfriend Deborah Derrick was pregnant with his child, although she later miscarried. The family tension within the Gaye household proved to simply be too much for her, so she moved out to her own apartment and urged Gaye to come with her to Europe. But Derrick certainly was far from Gaye's only romantic companion in the months leading up to his death. Based on family accounts, Women were constantly coming in and out of the house and getting subjected to his volatile temper. And it wasn't like his substance struggles were to blame for all that, as his relationships had been rocky even in the best of times. Before he died, Gaye had 3 children: Nona, Frankie, and Marvin III, the latter of whom had been adopted by Marvin Jr. and his first wife, Anna Gordy. His biological mother was Denise Gordy, Anna's niece, who was just 15 years old when she became pregnant by Marvin. Nona and Frankie's mother was Janice Hunter, Marvin's second wife, whom he met when she was 17. A predilection for younger women by famous musicians wasn't exactly unheard of at the time, but it also certainly didn't add much stability to Marvin Gaye's life. In 1984, Marvin Gaye was nominated for the final Grammy of his career in the Best Male R&B Vocal Performance category for his album Midnight Love. During this time, professional critics were just starting to wake up to the full extent of Gaye's musical prowess. Midnight Love was particularly well received, and he appeared to be securing a firm place in music history despite all the drug abuse and tax evasion. With the benefit of hindsight, it's clear that Gaye is a monumental figure in the history of popular American music. But while he was alive, he was never quite as appreciated as he deserved to be. For example, his 1968 album In the Groove is now considered his artistic breakthrough, despite only making it to number 63 on the US charts when it was first released.
But I'm pretty depressed most of the time anyway.
Just 4 days before he was shot and killed, Marvin Gaye made one last attempt on his own life as he tried to jump out of a sports car that was going 60 miles per hour. He walked away with just some bruising. Gaye's previous suicide attempts are also well documented. Back in 1969, he considered shooting himself before he was stopped by Motown founder Berry Gordy. Then in 1979, there was the time that Gaye ingested an ounce of cocaine, believing it to be more pleasant than a gun. At this stage of his decline, he was only leaving his house while under the influence. On at least one occasion, he was found stumbling along freeway overpasses. For the most part, though, he remained in his own room while the psychological battle with his father rumbled on. Marvin Gaye once admitted, "It wasn't simply that my father beat me, though that was bad enough. By the time I was 12, there wasn't an inch on my body that hadn't been bruised and beaten by him." On April 1st, 1984, Marvin Gaye Sr. was angrily storming through the house looking for an insurance letter. He shouted at his wife, but she was busy tending to their son. Marvin Jr. was reportedly in a state of perpetual undress, which likely bothered his father even more. Still unable to find the letter, Marvin Sr. started to scold Alberta until her son came to her defense and shoved his father into the hallway. A scuffle ensued, although Alberta was able to separate the two men. However, Marvin Sr. soon returned and shot his son twice in the chest with the pistol that Marvin Jr. had sent himself months earlier. Marvin Sr. would later claim that he thought the pistol was full of BBs. According to Marvin Jr.'s brother Frankie, as Marvin lay dying, he claimed that he had his father shoot him because he couldn't do it himself. Marvin Gaye Jr. was declared dead at 1:01 p.m. on April 1st, 1984, just 1 day shy of his 45th birthday.
Family and friends were shocked and wept openly in the wake of the killing.
Years after Marvin Gaye's death, his sister Zeola claimed, "Marvin knew if he ever touched Father, my father would kill him. It was a mercy killing. Father took Marvin out of his misery." Many people close to the singer believed that he essentially committed suicide by letting his father kill him. In a recorded conversation between Gaye and his bodyguard Andre White, White told him, "You want to die and you're too chicken to kill yourself, but if you keep with your daddy, he's told you what he'll do." What do we make of a world in which a man is shot twice in the chest by his own father, and everyone in their orbit declares it suicide? In his incredible power and cruelty, Marvin Gaye Sr. was regarded by his family as nothing less than a force of nature. Nevertheless, multiple relatives and family friends later described the tragic incident as an intentional provocation on the part of Marvin Jr. Marvin Gaye has been widely embraced by the music industry in the years since his untimely death. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987 and earned the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award in 1996. The Marvin P. Gaye Jr. Memorial Foundation was established in his honor, and April 2, 1985 was declared the Marvin Gaye Jr. Scholarship Fund Day. 4 posthumous albums have been released, the most recent being 2019's You're the Man. In the last months of Marvin Gaye's life, he was by many accounts abusive, paranoid, and destructive. He found solace in cocaine and pornography and terrorized members of his family. But those chaotic last months don't tell the whole story. Marvin Gaye may have been at the height of his musical powers in 1984, but that couldn't erase all the trauma he endured. His vices and self-destructive behavior were clearly the habits of a man who was desperately trying to hide from himself, from the world, and from the man who had brought him into it. If you or anyone you know is having suicidal thoughts, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK 8255.